are waiting for the European stress test results. We are already learning, though, about how exactly the banks are going to be judged, what they're being stress tested for. Just over an hour from now, we'll find out who made the grade, who failed. So just how many need to fail for the markets to actually take the results seriously? We're joined now by Moody's Analytics chief economist, Mark Zandi. Mark, ironically, you say a certain amount of failure is necessary here for success.
Yeah, it has to be credible, so that means that the banks have to be put under significant stress, and if it's stressful enough, there will almost certainly be a fair number of banks that flunk, that in a sense that they need to go out and raise additional capital.
So what we learned this morning here at Bloomberg is that the test metrics are going to look at bonds held in the trading portfolio, not held to maturity portfolio when it comes to exposure. Is that stressful enough as a metric?
Well, if that's in fact what they decide to do, that would be a bit disappointing, because that allows the banks to avoid write-downs on a fair amount of their sovereign debt. And so I think that would be disappointing. Of course, we'll have to take a look at the totality of what they've done to make a judgment. But just looking at that particular aspect of it, I think that would be that would not be encouraging. Well,
take me to the next phase of this, which is, say there are a number of banks deemed to have failed. Then the question of how they raise that capital comes up. Is that a concern here? If a number of these countries and banks have to then go to the credit markets or perhaps go to their own government to foot the bill, doesn't that once again raise concerns about overall debt?
Well, if the amount of capital that needs to be raised is very large, let's say it's well over $100 billion, yeah, that might raise some concern that the banking system is even weaker than most people had anticipated. If it's around $100 billion or less, I think these institutions will be able to raise that capital, and either through the private markets or governments will have to step up. So I think that $100 billion mark is probably an important benchmark. Anything around that, a little south of that, would be okay. Anything significantly north of that would be, I think, a matter of some concern.
Well, here at home, there's certainly plenty of conversations happening about debt and deficits in this country and what's ahead in terms of the expiration of the Bush tax credits. You think in some ways that the tax credit should be allowed to expire?
Well, yeah, I think that only for upper-income individuals do I think that should the tax cuts revert back to where they were prior. But even there, I think we probably should phase in those tax increases. To me, the recovery feels very fragile, and I don't think it's going to be able to gracefully digest higher tax rates at this point in time. So, you know, if I had my druthers, I think I would phase in those tax increases for those upper-income individuals over the course of the next couple, perhaps 3 years. For everyone else, I would make the tax cuts permanent.
But even if you are phasing in effectively tax hikes, that's still adding, you know, stress during a period of recovery. How do you balance that level out?
Well, that depends on how you phase it in. You know, I think if you did it over a 3-year period, I think that would be sufficient. I think the economy could digest that. The recovery could tolerate
3 years?
That. Over a 3-year period, yeah. So let them revert 1/3 in the first year, 2/3 in the second, and then you're back to where you were prior in the third year. I think that would be prudent. Anything more than that, I think, would be pushing it a little bit too hard.
Can you explain how you got to that bottom line? Like, why that period of time, and why, you know, what are you seeing 3 years out that makes you think that that period of time would be a safe way to roll these back in?
Well, I do think a couple, 3 years down the road, we will be in a measurably better place. I think that we are working through the problems that caused the recession and is now weighing on the recovery. The deleveraging will be over by then. I think credit flows will be better by then. I think businesses will have gotten their groove back and will be investing and hiring, and we'll be off and running. So I think prudent planning would suggest that a couple, 3 years down the road, we'll be in a place where we can digest those higher tax rates. And, you know, at that point, we are going to have to address our very significant longer-term fiscal issues, and this is one of the key ways to address that, those higher tax rates on upper-income individuals.
All right. Mark, thanks for giving your insights. We love talking to you, as always.
Thank you.